Lease options, do's and don'ts. Now, this is a more macro view, but I wanted to give you an idea based on some of my experience so that you can take it into consideration as you are considering things to do as you uncover deals. Lease options are a great tool. A lease with an option to purchase the property. Two separate contracts so that you are keeping everything very clean, understandable. There's a meeting of minds for the lease. There's a meeting of the minds for the option to purchase the property. And all of the terms and the numbers for each of those instruments are there. There's a meeting of the minds with the signatures, a lease with an option to purchase. Now, over the years, I've seen all kinds of different methodology behind this, but I wanted to give you an idea here when we are dealing with the market that we are currently in as I am making this video, where the freight train of that market that was going up, up, up for years is now starting to roll. It's starting to get softer. And we've got a lot of people that have really sweetheart loans on their properties. They've either bought a property or refinanced their property with the really low interest rates. So if you were to uncover a motivated home seller, you're understanding the marketing, you're understanding what areas you should be investing in, you're uncovering motivated home sellers because of the layering of motivation, and you uncover a motivated home seller who has one of these types of loans on their property, and they are willing to let you buy this property subject to the underlying financing. In other words, you're taking over the payments. So that way you're getting the deed and the motivated home seller is able to move on with their life. So you've got the deed to the property and then you're wondering, all right, what are some of my exit strategies here? Now, obviously, you know going in what those exit strategies are, but at this point, we are talking about lease options. So if you were to then find a lease option tenant to come in, give you a non-refundable down payment that could be equal or more than the assignment fee if you were to find this property and be able to get it at a deep enough discount where a cash buyer would be interested in paying you an assignment fee for that contract. It could be with the lease option, you can get a non-refundable deposit up front that is equal to or possibly more than what you would be getting from an assignment fee. So that is attractive. And it just depends as far as the amount of the non-refundable deposit. What value is this property? What kind of numbers are we talking about here? And that is a conversation amongst itself because it's going to vary and it's going to be varying depending on the demand as well. But the point is, it can be attractive, and it can be attractive for a couple of reasons because these people are coming in thinking, this is going to be my property. This is going to be my house. They're going to take better care of it, theoretically. They're going to make payments on time because they don't want to lose out on that non-refundable deposit. So could that help you down the road if the government ever imposes a rent moratorium? Possibly. It depends on their situation, right? They've got to weigh out what it's worth to them to lose this non-refundable deposit or keep making those payments, but it's certainly something that has the chance to work in your favor as well. You can oftentimes charge a higher than normal rent and a higher than normal sale price down the road. So we're talking do's and don'ts with lease options. So that is a really great opportunity once you've got the deed to the property to consider that exit strategy if it makes sense. So what about the don'ts? And what about the experience that I talked about at the beginning of this video? Let's just say, for the sake of this conversation, instead of buying the property subject to the underlying financing, you had a seller that was not as motivated. And you decided to take that property using a lease with an option to purchase. The deed is still in the original seller's name. They've got a problem financially going on. You've uncovered them through your marketing, and you are acquiring that property with very little money up front using a lease with an option to purchase. And let's say in this don't type of hypothetical example here, you've decided to then offer it to somebody using a lease with an option to purchase, just like you were doing in our first example, except in the first example, you had the deed of the property. You're the legal owner of that property or your business is. But in this case, the original seller is still on the deed to the property. You've got a lease with them with an option to purchase. You then turn around and you offer a lease with an option to purchase on this property. So what happens if that seller, who you know has a financial challenge, moves on with their life and they then file bankruptcy? Now, I'm not giving any legal advice here, but this is something that happened to me years ago, and this was a big learning experience for me, except for the fact that my situation was like the original deal. I bought this property subject to the underlying financing. My company got the deed to the property. My company was the legal owner of that property. Then I turned around and I did a lease with an option to purchase for someone else. That seller then filed bankruptcy. So how does that situation differ from this don't situation where I never had the deed to the property? The original seller was still on the deed to the property. I had a lease with an option to purchase in this hypothetical example, and then I turned around and did a lease with an option to purchase to someone else. What happens if that mythical hypothetical scenario seller goes and files bankruptcy, and then the creditors are coming after the house because they realize, hey, what does this home seller have that we can come after? Well, let's just look. Do they own any property? Ah, they own property. Yes, they do. So that can be a real big problem if you've then gone and promised some other family that they've got the opportunity to lease this property with an option to purchase. If creditors are coming after this property, that can be problematic. That can be a situation you don't want. Now, again, I'm not giving any legal advice here. I'm giving a hypothetical example, but you can understand where the lease option can be a tremendous tool, and it can also potentially leave us vulnerable. We don't want to sandwich ourselves necessarily in between a situation that we don't completely control. At least from a personal standpoint, that's not something that I want to do. I'm not here, again, to give any legal advice here. A lot of people are sharing a lot of different ideas when it comes to lease options, and that is fine within whatever they're sharing. Do your due diligence. I'm just saying that to get the deed to the property first and then have that underlying loan that you are then buying that property subject to the underlying loan so you can start making payments on that loan, especially if it is a very attractive loan, low interest rate, and then you're turning around and deciding what are you going to do with that property. In this situation, we're talking about lease options. Then saying, all right, what do I have into this property? What can I get from this lease option buyer as a non-refundable down payment? And then, of course, you're doing your due diligence as far as screening tenants properly, lawfully, and all of that. The do's and the don'ts. We don't want to make ourselves vulnerable just to acquire property. We need to find sellers that are motivated enough so that we are going to be able to protect our business, protect ourselves, and ultimately protect the people that we are dealing with. We want to make sure that we are doing the best service for the seller. We want to make sure we're doing the best service for our end buyer with this lease with an option to purchase. Everything needs to be moral and ethical, and we don't want to get so excited to be able to acquire property to put ourselves or them in a bad situation. So I hope that helps. I'll share more with you in the next video.